Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about the natal chart of someone that committed some heinous acts. Notorious criminal, you may have heard of him. His name is Ariel Castro. He recently hung himself after being arrested and apprehended for the abduction, kidnapping of 3 young women and holding them against their will, and one of them for 10 years, or about 10 years, and then the other 2 a little bit less time. And I couldn't get a time of birth, so this is not going to be an actual chart based on his time of birth. It's a solar chart, and the time I had put was about 6 a.m. for his birth time. He was born in Puerto Rico. Birthday is July 10th, 1960. By the month and day, the 10th, it's funny, ironic that he's only one day from like Jodi Arias and Amanda Knox and O.J. Simpson. Anyway, first off, I want to talk about his sun in Cancer. As we know, Cancers can be sympathetic, emotional, demonstrative, family-loving, have a love of home. They want to be loved and nurtured. I wonder if maybe these heinous acts might have been committed as a result of him having, repressed feelings of being unloved. I mean, who really knows? I mean, in my opinion, he was psychotic. I don't know what, doctors really diagnosed him with officially, though. Next up, his moon is in Aquarius, and this could account for some of his bizarre and outlandish behavior. This conjuncts his solar 8th house cusp of sex and power and transformation. Saying that he was eccentric in this department would probably be a very strong understatement, folks. Now, this is speculative. I know I did doing a solar chart, but which puts his rising sign at Cancer, because that's going to be the same position as his sun sign. But speculating, could he have a Leo ascendant? It seems like the consensus that I've seen online seems to think he could very well have this. Perhaps he does. He would be showing, displaying a lot of negative attributes of Leo if this was the case. The domineering, controlling side of the sign, somebody very authoritative, intimidating, bullying, commanding, and not that you had to really be much of an intimidator against 3 young women when you're a guy, but you know what I'm saying. In this solar chart that I did, majority of planets are below the horizon, and this would be indicative of somebody that was more introverted as opposed to extroverted and gregarious, more subjective than objective. The subjective thing I could really understand and see in his chart. He has a fixed T-square that involves Neptune conjunct the 5th house of children, which is, I guess, it seems like it could fit deception and children. Moon in Aquarius conjuncting his solar 8th house, cusp of sex and power, and Mars in Taurus in the 10th house of authority. Obviously, people that have fixed T-squares, as this configuration in their horoscope, can be very immutable and intransigent, content on having things their way, and it really seems like, as far as these signs and houses go, this really, seems to be very, unfortunately, does seem to fit Castro very well. Now, his sun makes a long inconjunct to his moon in Aquarius, which this would indicate a conflict between the emotional needs, which is the moon sign, and the wants, which would be the sun. Sun in Cancer is emotional and sympathetic. Moon in Aquarius is almost the antithesis. They're humanitarian, but they're also very emotionally detached. So we could see where this conflict might cause some problems, psychologically for him, maybe. His sun is adversely aspected, and when I say this, has a number of negative aspects and makes only one real auspicious or positive aspect. That was to Mars. And sometimes when people have, adversely aspected sun in their chart, it can, be possibly psychological issues that they have to combat and contend with. And there could also have been some self-esteem and confidence issues that were lingering with this man as well. And a lot of times, if you don't have your sun sign, I think, positively aspected, you could display a lot of the negative, characteristics that might be associated with it, where such as Cancer, can be known to be clannish and maybe, a little bit really too much introverted to themselves. And, basically, not only did he live a sheltered existence in this period where he had these women in captivity, he basically isolated them, from society as well. Another aspect in his chart, he has Mercury in conjunct Jupiter, and this could be a tendency toward distorting the truth and possible embellishment. And maybe this led to himself convincing himself, deluding himself, that maybe he, in some warped, bizarre sense, he could get these women to actually like him and be attracted to him. I'm just speculating, but maybe that could be true. Alright, I'm going to get to right now, another thing I wanted to point out quick is that his Venus adversely aspects Saturn in his chart, makes an opposition, and this could, maybe he, even though he had been, had I believe a common law life prior to these abductions and kidnappings, he didn't seem really compatible with this woman. That's probably an understatement. And I may have experienced, as far as sorrows and disappointments and despondency in connection with finding somebody that really loved him, or, and being able to love this person. And it could have been attributed also to a lack of self-love. Now I'm going to get to kind of chronology with his, these heinous acts, for Ariel Castro. Now, on August 22nd, 2002, the sun was at about 29 degrees Leo. And a lot of times, when a planet, like the sun, is in the latter stages, it could be of significance as far as the end of something in somebody's life. And unfortunately, this was the end of Michelle Knight's freedom for some time, since that's the date she was abducted. At this time, Castro's progressed Venus made a long conjunction with his natal Pluto, which could be indicative of possible, transformation as far as his thinking about love went. And unfortunately, this was something that was very wretched and evil on his part. There may have been a transformation, but obviously it wasn't for the better. At this same time, his progressed Mars conjuncted his 12th house solar cusp. And this could indicate possible covert, surreptitious, if you will, sexual liaisons and experiences. Amanda Berry was abducted, or presumably on this day, this is when she disappeared, was on April 21st, 2003. Sadly enough, as most of you know, this was a day right before her 17th birthday. What a way to celebrate this. Not only is that the case, but the sun was at about 1 degree Taurus on this day. And, whether natally or predictively, a lot of times a sun or a planetary position in, in the first few degrees especially, could signify the beginning of something. Unfortunately, in this particular instance, this was the beginning of a very horrific and terrifying period that Amanda Berry had to endure, unfortunately. On May 6, 2013, Castro was apprehended, captured, and brought to justice. At this time, Jupiter conjuncted his solar 12th house. Now, a lot of people, might have a misconception that Jupiter is always about being benign and benevolent and kind. This may be the case in a lot of instances, but Jupiter in a lot of instances also is something that expands and enlarges. The 12th house is connected with not just secrets, but incarceration, imprisonment, and confinement. When Jupiter made a conjunction to his solar 12th house cusp, I think we can get the picture on this. This definitely expanded a possibility of being, locked up in this period. It seems like this was, he was destined to go to jail on this day, people. And I think as far as Providence goes, hey, it seems like his luck ran out, did it not? On September 3rd, 2013, Castro hung himself in his jail cell. At this time, the transiting sun had made a conjunction with his natal Pluto. As most of us know, Pluto is a planet connected with death. Well, anyway, people, that will conclude this YouTube astrological segment about Ariel Castro. And people, tune in next time where I'll be dissertating and talking about continuing my series with the aspect segments on YouTube. Until next time, people, stay well.